afternoon. And I'm Adrian Marcoux, Chairman of GSA, and it's my privilege to welcome you to our annual meeting. And I will start by thanking you all for taking the time in the busiest time of the year for our industry, and you took the time, and we have such a good attendance to our meeting, and that shows interest for GSA, and we're very grateful for that. For those that don't know, this is the 16th annual meeting of GSA, the 16th. That obviously talks to the GSA's strength in time and its enduring presence in the industry. And in what a time we have that it came. As we all know, we are seeing a sea of changing in the industry. We see market expansions, we see market saturations, we see new gaming channels, we see companies coming into the scene, we see mega consolidations, and some of us are part of that. And you know, in all this, the corollary during this is that the technology continues to have a quintessential presence and role in the advancement of the industry, and certainly GSA will be in the middle of that, providing the technology that is required to spur innovation in our industry. And obviously, at this point, we moving into the next year, we have to look at, assess the situation in the industry and where GSA is, and make sure that we do any required adjustments. And going through this, first I'll look at a little bit at GSA as a team. GSA is a team, and we have a wonderful staff, and that staff will talk to you today. We'll see a few of them. They will represent themselves. They do a wonderful job. But I also want to acknowledge the board, and just take a minute and look at the list of these folks that are on the GSA board, and I want to personally thank them, first of all, to thank their organizations for the time they put in GSA, and also thank personally the individuals that are on the board, because I tell you, besides the time that they are volunteered by their organizations, they're volunteering their own time. I mean, I can tell you from personal experiences, they put their passion and time, and so GSA continues to progress and serve the industry as it does. Also, if you look at the landscape here, you see that there are, if you look at the landscape of a platinum members of GSA, you'll see that we have newcomers, and you also have companies that they have been here in industry for a long time, and some of them, they have been serving GSA in the capacity of platinum members for all duration of the 15 years, and we really thank them for that. And the reason we put this up is because obviously for GSA, funding, it's an important part, and the funding provided by the platinum members, it's very, very important to us. Another piece that I want to show you, it's this slide. And this slide, it's actually reflecting the relevance of GSA. And I'll explain why. If you look at this, first of all, you see a welcome section, and that welcome section shows that GSA, it's doing well. GSA, people come on board, GSA, it's attracting membership, and you see a list of various members that they came on board. But also, if you walk around this slide, you'll see who's in gaming, right? I mean, you'll see the very fabric of the gaming industry represented there by the individual logos that you'll see, but also you'll see the very fabric of GSA. These are the GSA members. So GSA, it's representing it's a quintessential representation of the gaming industry, and who's in the industry is represented in GSA. When I started this, I said that we are in the midst of a sea of change, and be assured that the board is attuned to that, listens to that, adapts to that. Starting early this year, we had meetings where we charted Peter, and with the help from the board itself and also with third parties, we We reassessed the direction of GSA and also how GSA should take advantage of the opportunities presented by these changes and also how to react to the challenges. And you'll see further by following presentations the progress we made in that regard. And also in that sense, I want to assure you that the board continues to pay very close attention to the adjustments in the industry and make sure that GSA is best positioned to react to those and serve the industry as it should and its industry so badly needs. I will pass along this presentation to other folks, but I won't do it before thanking you for the contributions to GSA. Thank you for what you do and did so far for GSA, but even more so, urging you to continue to give GSA your time, your money, the time of your organization, the people, and also talk to others about GSA so others join GSA and we grow this association even further. So with that said, I'll invite here to the stage the man that has been in GSA for 15 years and led GSA and breathed GSA and has so much passion for GSA that we all admire it. So Peter, come on up.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the kind introduction. Adrian, welcome, all of you. 16th year. I want to talk about the agenda that we're going to be covering today. We're going to keep it very short and to the point. I'm going to give the financial report in the absence of our treasurer. Unfortunately, he was unable to make it. He sent me 2 slides, so I will touch on that. We're going to give you a quick 2014 update. What have we been doing this year? And what have we achieved? Where have we been? Both on the technology front, etc. I'm going to talk about the 2015 priorities, what we see, and I'm going to hand it over to a gentleman that's very well known in this industry, Bruce Rowe, who will actually close this session as our keynote and I think drive a couple of points home. That being said, let's start. What does our financial picture look like? As Adrian alluded to, the mergers and acquisitions have a significant impact. If you looked at our membership slide, you must have seen or recognized that some of these names might no longer be there next year. And as an organization that's currently solely dependent upon membership dues, we obviously are in the crossfires of that. However, the board is indeed listening, and there are meetings taking place to address one of the key strategic elements of 2014. If you look at our expenses, our revenue versus expenses, our revenue dropped by $30,000 if you look at what was budgeted. We tried to contain and reduce our expenses to the tune of about $70,000. So whilst these numbers seem small for us, they still have a significant impact. If you look at the categories in which we try to save, you can see that they are broken down as to how the variance details as to where we spend our money, operational versus technical meetings, etc. So this gives you an overview that we project that our retained earnings at the end of the year, yes, we expend more than we get in. I'm sure you've seen that, by the tune of about $200,000. And yes, we project by the end of this year, we should be carry forward $100,000. As you can already conclude, that does not allow us to operate in a positive cash flow position in 2015. So these issues are being discussed, and we'll see how this will pan out. Let's talk about the strategic plan. We have a 5-year strategic plan in place, and this is now the third year, I'm sorry. And I want to talk to some of the elements. The green means we're doing fine. The yellow means we have to watch it. It could go red, or it could go green. And let's talk about the very first of our 4 pillars. It's standards development. How do we perform in the area of standards developments? And you see, it's all green except the word development is yellow. You ask yourself why. We did a research this year. We had the great pleasure of working with some very talented individuals in the course of this year. One includes Bruce Rowe, who had a very specific task, and I'll let Bruce talk about it as our keynote. The other gentleman we got involved was a gentleman called John Long, who's been in the business for a long time, and he's assisted us with talking to all our members, listening to them, one-on-one. I think 36 or 38, John, he spent hours on the phone. And it's very important to get your feedback independently and listen to what your concerns are. So I think one of the things that the research study showed to the board and to us, to GSA Inside, is that we have to look at the implementation issues and the effectiveness of the implementation, the efficiencies. Are our standards really efficient? Can we improve somewhere that might make adoption smoother? The engineers that work on these technologies for so many years, and we go through this cycle of improvement of standards, are there issues we can improve upon? And I think that is something that we will take very close to heart, because at the end of the day, development, more efficient implementation drives to more efficient adoption. And now we get to the adoption state. You see this also as being yellow. Yet, further down the presentation, I'll share you some highlights which you might not be aware of, which are probably going to be more of a surprise in the good sense. But we can do more. And we have to look at where we can focus on to ensure we can drive adoption in this industry, because technology is the backbone of this gaming industry, and it's going to exponentially change, so we better stay on top of it. If you look at our industry relevance, well, guess what? We are the only organization in the world that deals with gaming technology and creating standards around that. And we'd love the industry to come to GSA to participate and identify what are the areas where this organization can contribute to making it to grow and drive innovation and make it a better landscape for all of us. The last one is in red. You know, I think, why. Funding remains a very important element, and Adrian articulated that, and the board is zooming very heavily into that. Let's talk about the achievement. Building relationships is very important. We have built significant relationships, and I want to touch on a few of those. As I've already articulated, we are living in an exponentially changing world from a technology perspective, and not only technology, everything around us is moving at lightning speed. Think back about the iPhone. The iPhone is now 7 years old. So the issue then is, how do we interact? And every time I go to these meetings, this morning there was a great panel discussion where the CEOs, Patty Hart, and all the other ones were on the panel. And one of the questions was the influence of the regulators. There's a fine balance between the industry domain and the policy domain, and how do we collaborate together and drive this industry forward, because otherwise we can stifle and kill the industry. And to that effect, one of the presentations I gave many times over is the change in the world and the impact of change of technology on our landscape in the gaming, and it has to do also with addressing the regulatory issues. Can a regulator really change the internet? There's some hard questions to be asked. And I think in London 2 weeks ago, we had a very fascinating dialogue with some of the regulators. Next thing I want to talk about is the creation of a trusted environment. We recognize that we need to collaborate with the policy domain makers, which are the regulators. So GSA started to change the bylaws to enable the creation of a trusted environment, which is an environment that's separate, where members of the regulatory or policy domain can participate in to discuss issues that are relevant to our industry and then communicate them through the board, and then the industry can address those. These industries took place with some very progressive regulators from across the United States and Canada. They were all kind of quiet meetings that took place, but GSA continues to investigate what is the best way for us to collaborate. Should the regulators find another forum, and should we interact with the other forum? And you see the names on there, like IAGR, the International Association of Gaming Regulators. We had a meeting with them in January, Adrian and myself, and we talked about how we could better interact, because building bridges is very, very important. We have to continue building bridges and relationships, and I think that's what GSA has been doing in 2014. You also see the NTGCR, which is represented by Jamie Hummingbird, Native American. It's very important to get the Native Americans involved, and Jamie Hummingbird is very much involved and wants to get a discussion between those Native Americans and the rest of the industry. So it's all good. We're not there yet, but I can assure you we will continue to build these bridges. NAGRA, we talked to the North American Gaming Regulatory Association, and the next couple of weeks there is in Pennsylvania the International Association of Gaming Regulators, where GSA will also speak and try to encourage that dialogue and see where this goes. Now, the last bullet point that you see on there is we facilitate a historic dialogue. These are not my words. These are the words spoken by Francesco Rodano from Italy. And as you know, 2 weeks ago, GSA organized a workshop in London to investigate or to look at where we can provide benefit in the online gaming space. And how do regulators in Europe feel about that? Because the European Commission and the European Union is totally different than North America. To that extent, we created an office in Brussels, a virtual office, and we also retained the services of Phyllis Farrugia, which is very well known and used to work for the LGA, but is also heavily connected in the European Commission. And she's done a phenomenal job bringing together some of the key regulators. Francesco Rodano from Italy, the regulator from Spain, the UK regulators, they were all on a panel the first day. And Francesco made a comment. He said, this is the very first time that we, as regulators, are talking face-to-face with the operators/suppliers. That's a historic statement. We facilitated that discussion. And he's looking forward to further participate in a small group of progressive regulators to try and change the landscape, to drive innovation. He's looking for solutions. He's the largest online gaming, I think, regulator in the world, if I'm not mistaken. So a very, very nice statement, and I think we are making progress. So this is about building relationships. These things don't happen fast, I guarantee you that. But we're definitely focused into trying to make that happen, build those bridges. The next thing is, with respect to relationships, we also have to start educating, right? Awareness and education are important components of spreading the news of standardization. Ethan and myself have been living on planes. I know this is the gaming industry. Every one of us lives on planes. I know a guy there lives on planes all the time. We've been to 20 conferences, speaking at them, whether it's presenting, keynote speakers, and all that sort of stuff in 7 countries. So we've been around trying to spread the word of GSA. But we also educate, and education is a very important component. I want to touch on some of those. Anybody can come to GSA and ask GSA to be educated, whether it's their company, staff, government, it doesn't matter. We will send the right individual to the right country, to the right people to get educated about what it is we do into the glory details of all the technology, or at the highest level. We went to LT Games in Macau recently. Ethan had the pleasure of going down there, and he trained those engineers, about 25, I believe, or something on that, on the details of all the standards, and they were very engaging discussions. The Macau Polytech Institute, for those who've been to these annual meetings before, you know we have a very close relationship with Macau. We created, together with them, the educational program, which is a Bachelor of Computer Science with the option in gaming technology. The very first year, they had 22 students that participated. The second year, which is this year, they have 20. All 20 have part-time jobs at the MGM in Macau. So look at some of the side effects and the ripple effects of the work that GSA does. As a result of that, people get more aware of gaming, the technology around gaming, and they also are able to find positions very quickly in the operating companies and/or manufacturers. Playtech, Ethan just got back last week, if I'm not mistaken. He trained the people in Playtech about gaming technology. And in Club New South Wales, as you probably know, I've heard this morning, there's 96,000 or 95,000 devices. They've identified GSA as the standard to monitor, to do the central monitoring in the state of New South Wales. So Ethan will be traveling down there to educate these people and give the Club New South Wales operators a high-level overview of the benefits of GSA standards. If you do create standards, we want to make sure that devices work together across different suppliers. To do that, we build tools. We are not in the tool building business. We are in the creation of standards. So we go out and identify companies that pay tools. We find people who are willing to sponsor that. And the very first tool is one that's very close to our heart, which we had a setback on. It's called the G2S, the certification verification tool, or called CVT. And you can see these timelines are a little bit spread out. This is not an easy task to do. So the company who undertook that did a great job. But the timeline slipped, and we had to make an adjustment. And we did make an adjustment. And I'm not here to speak about all the details. You can find that on the Radical Blue, the company we contracted with 2 years ago, all the details, and you can track the progress. But the nice thing is that the very first deliverable is being made, has been released for review last week. And this will continue in accordance to this timeline schedule. Now, this is very important because it enables us to start eventually certifying vendor A and vendor B. So if you buy a machine from vendor A and from vendor B, and you connect it to a system guy from vendor C, it's supposed to work together. So interoperability issues will be reduced. Is it going to be perfect? No. But I can tell you one thing, we will improve over time as everything improves over time. So the committees that have been working through that is a CIC committee, which is incredibly active, and these people have done a phenomenal job in helping to get that tool done. The GDS toolkit that exists today, for those people who are GSM members that can get access to that, it needs to be upgraded. The committee is working on identifying who's the best software vendor to do that, and how are we going to get it funded. The last one is the SAS toolkit. Sorry. The SAS toolkit has been available for a long time and is only available to GSM members. Details can be found on our website. So let me share you some facts that you might not be aware of. This came out of our adoption survey, which was done by Professor Gavin Clarkson from the New State Mexico University. 190,000 EGMs today support G2S. 145,000 of them support GATT. GATT is an acronym, but what essentially means it enables a regulator to remotely validate, and an operator, the version of software they have on their floor and see if that software indeed has been approved by the regulator. Simply put, that's what the GATT function means. It's a function that's in very high demand because it provides significant efficiencies to regulators. And over 1,000 systems, and I think this took all us by surprise, support some form of GSA standards. Now I know there's a lot of details missing. I know we need to do a lot more. We need to look at trend lines. We need to look at more details about the functionality, and we have some graphs, but we didn't want to bore you with that. These are the highlights. So what it tells you, the picture it paints you, is that GSA standards are around in the world. And if I go to the next picture, what is very amazing to see is that those people, the companies that have 70% of the global market, and this is based on a report from Todd from 2013 ShipShare, 70% of the global market support G2S. What was also amazing out of the survey that was done, 76 countries. In 76 countries, you can find gaming devices that to some extent support one or more GSA standards. For those in the room, I'm sure they know, the Greek government has stipulated the use of 35,000 VLTs to be connected using G2S or S2S standard, depending upon the configuration. Last year was Austria. I have Canadians in the room. We talk about 110,000 machines and a potential replacement cycle. I mean, these numbers are significant. And I told you already about Club New South Wales. With this, I'd like to hand it over to Kerry, who's going to talk about the player user experience as an operator and hopefully speak to those operators. He's going to talk about a little story. Kerry?
Thanks very much, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll keep this very brief. The slide says this is a story about the player user interface, but really it's a story about business value. Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries, which is the organization that I work for, we've been a member of the GSA for going on approximately 5 years. And at the time we joined the GSA, the reason why we did it, there was a number of other Canadian jurisdictions that had joined, and as Canadians always like to do, we like to kind of do things together. So we joined in as well, and at the time we saw that there was value in collaboration and working closely with our other jurisdictional friends, but at the time it wasn't very clear to us what the value proposition was for the GSA. I can tell you since that time we've seen significant value. Just to give you some context here, we run a multi-channel gaming environment in Manitoba. We've got VLTs, we've got casinos, we have regulated online gaming, bingo halls, you name it. And the business reason that we initially saw for the GSA was we wanted to upgrade our entire VLT network a few years ago. And where we were coming from was a very proprietary closed environment which had produced significant value for us. But the time was that we felt that we needed to move away from that and really approach that business from a standards perspective, because we felt that there was going to be a significant need to change the player experience over time, and we thought that standards would really help in that regard. So a couple of years ago, along with a lot of our other friends in Canada and elsewhere, we started to implement the G2S protocol. And as Peter said, there's a significant install base in the VLT environment in Canada now. So the next part of our vision in Canada was really to try and improve the player experience, and how we were going to do that was through a thing called the player window, the service window. We affectionately call it the player user interface. And our proposition was that we felt that we needed to do a better job of communicating with our players. Obviously, we've got the game content, but we felt there was an opportunity to provide other products and services through that window, other gaming content, other products and services. And from a player experience, when we were looking at that, we found that there was a number of different technology solutions out there. And at the time, all the different vendors had a different perspective on how they were going to do that. And we felt that if we were going to offer that experience in a multi-vendor, multi-VLT vendor environment, that we needed to have a consistent way to do that. And we looked around and we found that everybody was doing it a little bit differently, and we felt that we could not deliver that experience. So we had conversations with a number of other jurisdictions and found that they had a very similar vision, and they felt that there was a value in working together. So a couple of years ago, there was a decision made that through the Operator Advisory Committee, which I chair, there was a real discussion about trying to get all the operators together to determine what our requirements were in this environment, and seeing if we could use the GSA to help really drive out some standardization in the player user interface space. So since that time, we've had significant success. We really started, first of all, on one side, we started on with the developing standards on the VLTs, on the EGMs themselves. And we had a significant number of meetings with the operators, with the industry, with testing labs, with regulators. And I must say it was a very, very difficult process, but at the end result was we were successfully able to identify significant, consistent business requirements, which we ultimately sent forward to the board for their endorsement, and it resulted in the creation of the Player User Interface Technical Committee. So we actually had a committee set up to deal with a very significant business problem. The PUI committee's been around for approximately 12 months, so they've been very, very active working on standardization around we call it the EGM side of the equation. Over the last year, the committee turned itself to really developing standardization around the host, or really where the content is coming from, because the vision that we have for the player user interface is that really content can kind of come from everywhere. We see the window as really as it's kind of like a blank canvas. You know, you think of the internet 15, 20 years ago, without standardization, nothing was really happening. Once the plumbing got standardized, well, all the great things that we see on the internet today is a result of people having access to a canvas or an environment that they could trust and would operate consistently. So again, we spent the last several months working on developing requirements for the host side of the equation, and now that's been endorsed by the board and sent over to the PUI committee for work. And obviously everybody gets a lot of email, and I do too, and I find that I literally get an email almost every day, in some cases 3 or 4 a day, from the PUI committee in terms of some of the efforts that are going on. And it's remarkable how a couple of operators got together, determined that there was a business requirement, got together, shared the voice, and because the GSA provides such a tremendous opportunity to get together with industry, like we're literally sitting in the same room together, and we can talk about business requirements, we can talk about business needs, and really, when you get into a room and you spend time together, it's amazing how much commonality there is. So I could go on and talk about this forever, because it's obviously a very, very important subject to my organization, but I will say that really the GSA is about business value. And our experience was that when we first started, it wasn't really apparent to us. But now that we've been active for a number of years, it's incredible. And the things that we're hoping to do in that environment, it could not have been done without the GSA. So I'll leave it at that. And I think, Ethan, you're next.
Thank you, Kerry. Now we get to the technical side of things, the committee updates. I'm going to try to keep it light, keep it quick, because I know everybody's got other things they want to do, and we all want to hear what Bruce has to say. So I'll try to get going quickly. First of all, I'd like to thank the leadership team for the committees, for their hard work. Each of our committees has a chairman and a vice chairman. They're the ones who set the agendas, set the schedules, and try to make sure that we get things done in a timely fashion and get things done also in I should say, a business timely fashion, things get out the door. These are the list of everybody. I won't go down the list, but we have a wide range of different companies involved in the leadership. They're a great bunch of guys, and once again, I'd really like to thank them all. In terms of the system standard, there's actually been a tremendous amount of work going on by the S2S committee this year. One of the key things that they've been doing is finishing an alignment project to try to get the S2S standard fully aligned with G2S so that functionality that's available in G2S can also be offered to other endpoints other than EGMs. So that was a big project we've been doing for the last few years, and we finally finished that. We've also been trying to work on what Peter talked about before, trying to make the protocols easier to implement, easier to test, easier to adopt. And one of the things that we've introduced through both S2S and G2S is a new WebSocket transport and the use of binary XML. In terms of new functionality, mystery jackpots, progressive display capabilities have been added to S2S. And we've also been working in the background to try to help improve the process of doing download and installation of software. One of the reactions that came back from the OAC, from Kerry's committee a few years ago when download was first getting started in the industry was that, look, we can't have download servers from every different manufacturer in our computer rooms. There's not enough room. You guys got to start working together and figure out how download can be done in a generic manner so we can have one download and configuration server managing the installation of software from multiple different manufacturers. So to support that, the S2S committee's been busy working on things like the package manifest file, coming up with ways of distributing GATT results. Those are the authentication keys for the software to make sure things got installed properly. And so they've been doing a lot of work around that. They've also taken the GATT protocol and made it available as a truly network-based protocol, so you can run it over HTTP using REST type of facilities. So they've been very busy. Likewise, the G2S committee's been very busy. They've also adopted WebSockets, binary XML. They've done a lot of things, as I say at the bottom there, to work on the standard simplification. We did a project to go through and look at the protocol, look at various features, identify things that were unnecessary, could be improved. And so I think the next version of G2S, people will be very happy and find it, once again, easier to implement, easier to test, easier to adopt. Also, we've been addressing various business needs that have come up from manufacturers and operators. Some of them are listed up there, things like supporting multiple ID readers simultaneously for player tracking, illegal door open features, standalone progressive controllers, mystery jackpots, and things like that. So these guys have been busy. The Transport Committee, they've actually done the WebSocket, new WebSocket transport, and have put together a transport negotiation mechanism to facilitate that. They've also been doing a lot of work to upgrade our security specifications to the latest security specifications that are used in the industry. So that's an important part of the next release. The GDS guys, they've also gotten on board to help improve the download process. They've put together a firmware manifest file format so that the peripheral manufacturers have a way to deliver firmware in a standardized manner to the EGM manufacturers, and then they can integrate that information into the download process so you can download the firmware through the EGM into the peripheral devices. So there's been a lot of work going on there. And then the player user interface. And it is a very complex piece of technology from a standards viewpoint. And there are actually 4 pieces of it that we have to coordinate, and that's what the PUI committee, John Taylor's committee, is in charge of. First of all, there's the control of the window itself, which is done through G2S. And then the communications that goes on inside the EGM to the content running in the windows, which is done through EMDI. And then we have to worry about the security of the communications of the content back to third-party application servers, and that's done by the Transport Committee. And then there's the actual PUI windows themselves, the templates that Kerry was talking about, the requirements for HTML and Flash that are needed to get the content displayed. And also all sorts of rules that have to be in place about isolating the browser environment from the EGM environment, so you don't get spillover and have regulatory problems and things like that. And that's really what the PUI committee and the PUI standard is all about. And so there are 4 pillars to the PUI standardization. We really have 4 committees involved in it. The PUI committee, they coordinate all the activities, but also G2S gets involved, and the transport committee gets involved, and we also do the work on the EMDI. So it's quite an effort. And then our newest committee, the Online Gaming Committee, they've actually been very active this year. We're just about done with the third-party game interface, which is really be a milestone for that committee. I think also for GSA, because it'll be our first standard in the internet gaming space. That particular standard is so that you can have a third-party remote gaming server. There can be a standard for that server to talk to an iGaming platform. So you have the gaming server that's running the games, displaying the games to the player, and there's a standard for it to communicate to the platforms that are doing the player registration, managing the players' accounts, and things like that. So that's exciting, and hopefully we'll have that done and actually get it out for member comment in the next couple months. After that, we're going to be really beginning to focus in on regulatory requirements, especially in the area of central monitoring and the reporting to the government agencies. We'll be looking at the external interfaces for geolocation, payment processors, and always in the background looking at what we need to do to keep the internet gaming activities integrated with the land-based activities and make sure that information can move seamlessly through those environments. And the big date we're shooting for is April 2015. We're hoping at that point that the next releases of S2S, G2S, Transport, GDS, PUI will all be ready to go out. And so in terms of members here, in the next few weeks, you're actually going to start seeing lots of emails coming out announcing that various protocols are ready for member comment, and that actually starts the process of getting the protocols released. And with that, thank you. I'll turn things back to Peter.
Thank you, Ethan. To Ethan's point, I think it's very important in light of what we found out that the membership uses the opportunity for the membership review period of the standards to really look at any issues that come out where they believe that the standards are not as efficient as they should be. We don't expect any surprises since everybody is able to participate, but this is a very important time. GSA has created a policy that we have a life cycle of the standards development process in place, so we don't just change these protocols overnight. There's a 3-year cycle that's very clearly depicted on our website, and it's important for our membership to understand that. We don't expect another release of a standard until 2018 or of these standards. So these standards don't come out very quickly. There's a lot of thought put into that, but now is the time for you guys to look at these drafts, comment on that, and every single one will be addressed by the committees. It's a mandatory requirements that we follow in our standards development process in line of the ANSI process. So thank you, Ethan. And by the way, when Ethan said he's very busy, these committees are very busy, Ethan is managing all these committees, so he's super busy. And in addition to that, he travels and educates people, so I don't know how the man sleeps, but Ethan is a phenomenal resource in the organization, done a phenomenal job. So thank you, Ethan. So what are we going to be focusing on 2015? So what are we going to be doing next year, really? I mean, keep it very, very simple. Finish what we started. These standards, these series of standards that Ethan talked about, many, many years of development and participation, lots of funding and effort put into that and resources, will be finished and released. That is a big milestone. One of the things we don't quite do well is communicate. We are not a marketing organization. I'm not a marketing individual, and the people behind us are not really a marketing expert. We had the great fortune of working with some people from the industry, including Bruce Rowe and John Long, who've been there a long time, and they do know how to market information. And we hope that if the funding gets sorted out, that our marketing strategy will drastically change to try to communicate with the industry globally who we are and what we have achieved. We tend to kind of do things and keep kind of quiet, which is not the way we should be doing it. So that will drive adoption. The elimination of potential inefficiencies by your membership's review, by our members' review, will also drive adoption. Implementation is all about making sure that there's no technology challenges in there. And on commercialization, we should try and identify and highlight, or we will highlight maybe on case studies, business cases that will happen in Canada, where does the real value of these standards lie? Because there's so many classes right now, how do we communicate to the industry the value of what we have created? And I think you have to ask yourself sometimes, what's the cost of continuously patching up the current legacy floors? There's only so much you can go. And for every single operator in this room, it will continue to cost more and more and more as you start patching up the floor. Increased funding will definitely be top of our list, which has been this year, and hopefully we'll find a result soon. Critically listening. It became clear from the survey that was done we want to listen more. And I talked to you about the regulator committee. We will continue the dialogue between the policy and industry domain and see where we can best interface and where, how we can do that. There's a lot of ideas, a lot of meetings taking place. I think so far it's very positive. We all share the same challenges, and we're going to see how we can build those bridges and how GSA can be involved, because we are an integral part in that segment. The next thing is an Operators Advisory Committee. I want to tell you a little story or a little reminder. In 1999, we brought Diana Bennett together in a room in Mandalay Bay. Bruce was there. Bruce was at that time working for Harris. And he vividly remembers that meeting where we split the room up in two. Half the site was operators, and there was quite a lot of them. Half the site were the manufacturers, all the guys. And then we asked these people to write on the board, the operators, what it is you want. And they wrote down on their whiteboard in the front, and the manufacturers did the same on the other side, and guess what? It didn't align. The industry did not know what the operators were really looking for. We've come a long way. I think that the story that Kerry told is very accurate. In the beginning, they didn't quite know what GSA was all about. Today, they very well understand the business value and the role that we as an organization play in facilitating, creating the benefits that now the operators in Canada and others in Austria enjoy. And the GSA Advisory Board, I think it's clear that the board is looking for additional input from those people who've been in the business a long time. And to mention a few names, it's a Bruce Rowe, it's a Buddy Frank, it's a Greg Solomon. Those kind of guys, Greg Solomon and Lyle Bell maybe, it would be good for the board to identify these individuals, put a policy in place, and listen to these people and bring them in as the board needs fresh ideas to ensure that we stay relevant in this industry. With that being said, it's a great honor to introduce to you our keynote speaker who will conclude this session, Mr. Bruce Rowe.
Well, thanks so much for having me here. In January, I was still a recovering GSA member. I was in about step 11 of the 12-step program. When Peter called and asked if he would come over, I was in my first GSA meeting probably in about 1999 or 2000. And I've been a member of the GSA board for 4 different companies, actually, during my career on the operator's side for 2 different manufacturers, and then when I was a consultant. And I'm really proud that during that time I was both in charge of and led the BGS committee, which was the Bald Guy Standard. And the Bald Guy Standard has proliferated very well. You can see we've got Kerry, who's adopted the standard. There's just, Dick Hadrell's part of the company. He's adopted the standard. So that standard has been out there, and there is a certification program if you want to sign up and get it. So when we talk about, that's not simply adopted, it's been implemented, and there's physical presence of the implementation, so we're really proud of that. But seriously, around, I think it was around January, Peter and I had a chat, and the board was facing some challenges, particularly around alternative funding opportunities. And this is not a new topic for GSA, but the importance of it is at its highest point for a number of the reasons, for the issues of consolidation. But one of the single biggest reasons is that operators, at least in the United States, are not participating at the level that they used to. So why is that? Well, one of the reasons that operators first joined GSA was to try and create a way to have influence on how protocols were managed, the change control process, who had access to them, who had influence to them, and the speed and timing at which they came to market. And at that time, there were 2 major protocols that were driving the business at the slot level, but there were close to 45 others that were being used to run our business. And I would suggest that one of the reasons that operators are not necessarily involved at the same level is because many of those issues have gone away. But many of the issues that the operators had have not gone away. And so one of the things that we found as we looked through our research, and John Long's back here. Where's John? John, stand up or raise your hand. John's the person that Peter's been referring to. And Gavin, where's Gavin? Gavin's there. There's Gavin, is the one that's done the adoption research. And there's another fellow, Chad Little, who's not here today, who's provided tremendous support in analyzing some of our technical standards, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So all of these resources were agreed to be brought to bear, and the reason was not simply to gather that data. As we started to look at alternative funding sources, we needed a pitch book. We needed something we could take out on the road to sell the story. And you know, one of the strengths and blessings of this organization is the number of engineers and the talented people that commit their time to create these standards. These are people that focus on problems, they get them done, they move on to the next one and look for new things that will add value. They don't spend a lot of time marketing their achievements after they do them. They just look for the next thing. And I've run organizations where engineering and software and lots of things are being done, analysis, and you do it and you move on. But without marketing and communication of that value, you go ask for additional headcount and people say, why? I don't even know what you're doing. Why would I give you more headcount? And so one of the things that came out loud and clear, as an organization, GSA has to do a better job of communicating the value that's out there and adding value today, but what could be done if there was a greater level of implementation and commercialization. And I really want to focus just on those three things for a minute, because as we looked at the survey results and you say, well, all these people have adopted this, you would say, why aren't people happier at the operator level? Why isn't the value out there? Why do we have to market it? Why aren't they marketing for us if all this is done? So if I go to my church and say that I adopt the concept of tithing, it means nothing until I write a check. Adopting the idea of a standard for a game means nothing until it has a receiver on the host side that says, I've added the value. At the meeting that Peter's describing, there were two key things that operators asked for. Number one, the ability to interrogate an EEPROM in the game, have that information pass through the SMIB or whatever we call that device in the game, and have it auto-populate the machine master file so I don't have to make sure I hired somebody that knows how to type to manage my machine master file. Has anybody typed the version of Windows into your PC recently? Has anybody typed a product code in other than to verify that it matches the one that's already there? No. One of the frustrations on the operator's side is they don't understand the difference between a protocol and an application. And a protocol, as I define it when I try and explain it to people, is it's simply a language. But it's not a book. A language enables a book to be written. A protocol enables an EGM to broadcast its personality to a host, which then maps it into a machine master file without human intervention. That's what operators are looking for. We talked about downloading code to bill acceptors. Anybody run a casino where you have to go and manually load bill acceptor code today? Of course you do. Why? I haven't done an upgrade to Windows myself in 2 years. I wake up in the morning and it's updated. We have bidirectional communication to games today. We're not talking about 1980 when we were doing serial polling and trying to migrate out of that decade. This is what's frustrating operators right now, is both of those examples have real commercial value. I guarantee you, if you go through most large casino operations today, you can find inaccuracies in a machine master file that, if not acted on, could cause you to be fined. Auto-populating that will eliminate that. I've worked in places where bill acceptor code doesn't work, and all of a sudden we have customers complaining because they can't put bills in. We make it hard for them to give us their money. That's not good. Okay? What year was it, Peter? The meeting? 1999 with Diana? That's only 15 years. When did SAS enable polling of the EEPROM, Russ?
30 years ago.
How many years?
30 years ago.
3-0? Yes. 3-0. When did G2S support polling, Ethan? 2007 years. Okay. So you see why there's some frustration when we talk to people, and I interviewed folks myself, people that I've known a long time, and one person said this was the unfulfilled promise. Because from their perspective, the promise was not that the protocol was done. The promise was that there were applications out there that added value that used the protocol. Okay, so that was one of the things that I heard loud and clear, okay? So what I want to share with you now is some work that was done by the team to create this pitch book. And one of the things that came out of this was how proud everybody in this room should be about what has happened with GSA in this history. I'm fortunate to have had a fairly long relationship with both the need and the solutions that GSA is involved in. And the first one was this slide. And this slide was designed so that if this was delivered on your desk and you never turned the page, you would know that GSA is made up of the who's who of gaming. And if your name isn't on there, you would wonder why. And what am I missing by not being there? And I think that's also one of the things that you'll see is the really huge growth in terms of the number of members. Now, we can look at this from a revenue standpoint, and that's a different perspective. But from the membership standpoint, I think it's incredible how many people think that GSA is important enough to commit their time, their money, and their expertise to understand and contribute to what's going on. 16 years of support by GSA Platinum members, and some of these are new, and Peter reflected on this, and some have been here since the beginning. And some of the founding members have been here every year since the foundation of this organization. And I would think that, I think ARISTOCRAT and Bally were the two first, if I remember correctly. And it was actually started by ARISTOCRAT when, Peter, you were an employee there, correct? So that's how far back that goes. And then you can see the incredible participation by our Canadian customers as operators as well as manufacturers with GTEC and particularly Spilo and doing some great work on the East Coast there, and then obviously the other ones that you're familiar with. IGT has been a huge supporter of this, and I want to make sure just everybody understands that at that point in time that I was discussing, IGT had a protocol which was SAS, but Bally also had a protocol called Bally Extended Simple Serial. And those were the two dominant protocols at the EGM level. And they were out there in very large numbers, both of them, by the way. And there was also a misunderstanding about who used which ones. But the point was that IGT and Bally have been huge supporters of the organization in spite of some very, very difficult technical as well as commercial discussions that have happened over those years. Since 1998, more than 180 companies have participated in GSA. That's huge. Just look at 180 just in terms of the number of people that are attending this conference that are in the technical area, and it represents a huge percentage of that group. 1,573 volunteers have contributed their time and expertise. So when we sell this pitch book, and I'm explaining this in some detail because all of you become advocates and salespeople when you leave this room. If someone says to you, what happens if we don't participate in GSA, one of the things that you lose is the diversity of opinions and market requirements that you could never gather on your own by hiring 2 or 5 or 6 engineers to focus on what GSA does. It's simply not humanly possible. And the diversity of input and experience set and skills of that 1,573 people that have participated over time is what makes this a unique organization. To create and manage that standard, it takes a lot of different people at different levels, and we mentioned the silver level, but there's also the bronze level and all the other people that participate, and including volunteers and people that work as consultants to the organization. So who is GSA today? And this is one of the slides that I found most interesting to reinforce that point about those 1,500 plus people. There are 68 professionals today driving your technology standards. And so if you have to explain to your senior management not just what the protocols are, but who's involved, I think this is an extremely compelling slide. So it's not just the who's who of companies, it's the who's who of expertise in this in this industry. And look at the people on your board, which we've seen before. This organization is only run by 7 staff members, but there are 8 committees and 48 participants that are managed by that group. And this is what's typically not known about nonprofits. I've been involved in several nonprofits outside the gaming space. And one of the things we calculate every year is the value in dollars of the volunteers that give their time to our cancer organization. And if we had to pay that number of people, there's absolutely no way we could provide those services. And we would not have the diversity, and sometimes we would not have the passion of the people that volunteer to do that work. So you now have on your jump drive the organization chart of GSA and who we are. And so if you have to explain it to anybody, and I hope you do as we try and spread the word more this year, this is who we are. And if you want to be at the table, this is how you get there. So in 1998, there were 45 different protocols, and there was a book by a woman called Susan Powders, I believe, and if I remember right, it was some diet fitness book called Stop the Insanity. And that was really an appropriate description of where we were as an industry with protocols. And so now, today, when we do our interviews with people and we ask them what are the standards, they answer 3. And the casinos say, then why aren't there only 3 in my casino? And it's because of implementation and commercialization. It's not because of adoption. And there are lots of reasons for that. I'm going to talk about a few of them because it's not just as simple as saying, well, let's go do it tomorrow. The other way to look at this slide as we fast forward 16 years is where would we be today without GSA? Would we have 45 standards? Would we have 90? Or would we have 135? I don't know the answer to that, but I am pretty confident it would be more than 45. But I can't say that it would be 3 times that. But I can say that it would be a lot harder to integrate, and it would be a lot harder to think about what you would write in an RFP for protocols today if it weren't for things like GSA. So as we think about this, and by the way, these kind of slides that you're looking at are like a good watch. You know, you look at the front and it tells time and it's got 3 hands and maybe a calendar, and it looks pretty elegant and simple until you take the back off. And you know, these are that kind of thing. We spent hours trying to distill these very complex messages into simple slides. But back in 1998, the industry was driven by proprietary protocols, and the organization was actually called Gamma, and it was made up of manufacturers only. And then when Greg Solomon was the first to join from Mandalay Bay, followed by Harris and others, that changed. There were about 45 different protocols. There were 6 members, and today we are 62. The thing that's changed since then also is that there was a rapid growth of new casinos and speed, and there are now new forms of competition and new technologies emerging every day. And so you can argue that the need today is not only as important, but more important. And so as we look at today, if you have to explain why GSA is not only relevant, but needs to be more relevant going forward, it's what we see on the right side of this slide. That there is no question that there's global industry growth. Greece wasn't on the map in 1998 as a gaming jurisdiction. How many? 35,000? 35,000 VLTs. Huge, right? Adopted GSA standards going forward. Canadian RFPs that came out for systems over the last 3 to 4 years. If you didn't have GSA, or when you could commit to deliver it, you didn't win. Very simple. If you don't have it, don't come to the dance. And that's going to be more and more in the future as people see the value of standardization. More regulators. Peter talked about that, and I remember being on the board when Peter talked about we have to get out and we have to go international. I was a bit of a nationalist at that point, saying that's not where the value is. And he said pretty much, no, but that's where it's going to be down the road, and that's where we should be influencing before the market opens and before regulators make a decision that's uninformed, and he went out and started to do that. The Australian commitment started 4 years ago in dialogue. Took 4 years for them to make that decision. They would not have made the decision they made if we went there 6 months ago and saw them at the last Australia Gaming Show. That was a relationship and a value that was nurtured over a long time. The new technologies we know about, there are emerging standards we have to be sensitive to. There's certainly the online mobile gaming area, which excites me as much as anything as when I've been in the industry, but it scares me more. There's probably no area of gaming that could taint the entire gaming industry badly than online. We cannot afford to have our reputation that we've worked so hard, both personally and as an industry, to protect and be proud of, tarnished by something that isn't managed and regulated well. And technology is what online gaming is. This other thing about Customer 360, there's nobody that can go to a meeting and talk about customer without talking about big data and mining things very efficiently and quickly in unstructured ways, and being able to derive great insights. And so we have to make sure that we have moved fast enough and far enough on the customer side, recognizing that where we started was primarily around accounting and auditing and integrity. So that could be a big change for us. And as Ethan talked about, having one view of the customer wallet and one view of the customer spend, and portability of points across online and lottery and bricks and mortar, that makes our job more complicated, as well as these people that operate this broad portfolio of gaming. So my closing slide is called "Physician, Heal Thyself." And this quote actually comes out of the Bible. That's how old this is. But it's been interpreted many different ways. But in business, and probably on a personal level, it's about looking at ourselves before we look at others and criticize them and tell them what they need to do to improve. And I have a real-world example of this. My father-in-law was a physician, and he was a surgeon. And he went in one night, got called in on emergency surgery, and had to go in and take a section of a guy's lung out because he was a very hardcore smoker. And so he cut out the lower lobe of his left lung, and came home, and I saw him, and I said, "How was work?" And I watched him drink a cup of coffee and smoke a cigarette and tell me about taking this guy's lung out. That is a real example of "Physician, heal thyself." I get the privilege up here to kind of comment from several different perspectives. There's absolutely nothing that prevents a slot manufacturer that makes systems and games from making their games broadcast to their system and populate that machine master file. That does not require customer demand. It doesn't require necessarily a new commercial pricing model. It doesn't require approval from anybody else. In fact, it could create a competitive advantage if your system did that. So why on earth wouldn't, let's see, what company is it going to be? Why on earth wouldn't Cygames insist that every Bally system that connects to any Williams game or any Bally game automatically broadcast the EEPROM personality and pre-populate that machine master file? Why wouldn't G-Tech do that with a Spielo game, an IGT game, or an Atronic game? Who do they have to ask? Nobody. So you can't blame that on operators. It's only on a matter of the companies understanding the importance of that functionality to their customers and then deploying it. There's nothing that says that a large operator in Canada that manages 19 properties doesn't insist on that from a manufacturer if that's the way it needs to go. And for GSA, I believe GSA needs to look at its standards with a fresh set of eyes. G2S has been recognized as a FAT protocol since the day it was built. It does not work well in all networked environments. Anybody disagree with that? You're all engineers, I'm not. Does anybody disagree with that? Can you use G2S on dial-up DSL in a remote gaming location in Canada? Anybody say yes? Raise your hand. Okay. There's been talk about G2S Lite since I had hair. It's not done. If we need to parse out G2S into 3 sections, so there's small, medium, and large, and small replicates everything and only what SAS does, there's nothing wrong with that. If you then have G2S medium that adds everything but the next heaviest section of the protocol, and I don't know what it is, it could be media class, I don't know what it is, but if it lets me do download of bill validators, then that might be next. And if that requires Ethernet speed, we need to educate the casinos that there's a cheaper way to do that than rewire your floor and spend $500 a drop to put IP down to the floor in Ethernet simply to do download of bill acceptor code, because that doesn't pencil out, folks. One of the biggest comments was, show me the ROI. Show me the ROI. Caesars just made their floors in 12 casinos high speed at about $100 a drop by putting essentially a black box on the other side of a piece of Belden, whatever it was, Russ, 8970, whatever. You can do this on Twinax. You can do it on Cat3 cable. You don't have to be rewiring your floor with fibers and Cat6 cable to do this. And so we need to break down these barriers to implementation and commercialization and take a real look at this, as if all of us were given GSA standards tomorrow and had the ability to commercialize those and personally gain wealth and fame. And then we can get these things out there. But by being a nonprofit, we don't look at them necessarily the same way we would as if we were a for-profit organization. Because you would not be able to sustain the amount of R&D that we have from volunteers. You would not be able to sustain the expense that we have if you were in a for-profit organization. So by looking at it that way, through that lens, with the engineering teams and with the operators, we can get a better sense of what are these barriers. So that next year, when we do this report card, the adoption number goes up by 10%, but the implementation number goes up by 50%. Those are the numbers we need on the scorecard next year. Now, the challenge of that is we're facing some financial challenges right now that cause us to answer the question of, if we only have 1,000 pounds of thrust to put against problems next year, which ones are they going to be and in what order? And that's what the board's going to have to face. And you all as members are going to have to agree to those priorities or step up and write some bigger checks so that more things can be done. It's very simple. This is time, money, and expertise. We can do all the same things as long as we have more volunteers. We can do all the same things as long as we extend time frames for 2 or 3 times what we have today. But I think that the message that I want to leave with you is not that this is the sky is falling. This is the world is waiting for this to happen. We just need to focus on those 2 sides of the bridge that Peter described and figure out why it's not coming together in the middle with applications that are adding value, that are causing commercial pull, that use GSA standards. And I hope that makes sense. And I have to tell you that this has been a real honor to work with this team again. I was very proud to be a member of GSA and the things that we undertook. I was more proud of the spirit in which all these companies that come together at GSA cooperate and talk among each other and then walk out of the door and compete viciously for things. It's a very unusual part about our business that I think that Bob Luciano, my friend, termed co-opetition. And it is really defines the way our industry works. And so what I would really challenge you to do is as you think through these issues that we're going to attack and face as an organization, that you really think about this physician heal thyself. Think about it from you and your company and how you participate in GSA. Think about it from how GSA produces things and whether or not they are efficient or effective. Those are very different things. G2S may be an effective protocol, but it may not be efficient. And when things aren't efficient, those create barriers to entry. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about applications or protocols or lots of other things. So this is a pivotal time, and it's a great opportunity for GSA to reinvent itself, and to reinvent itself not just in terms of the focus of what it's doing, but in the marketplace. And we're really privileged to have John, who's got a great marketing background, to have Gavin working with us, and then Chad, who's doing a comparison of SAS and G2S for us specifically so that you all can answer those questions, and also to help assist us as we might think about this light, medium, and large version. So with that, I appreciate being here and asked to address you, and I hope that I get to be some part of building these bridges with you in the future. And I don't have a website. My email's real simple. It's brucerowe@cox.net. Make sure you spell that right. It's COX, otherwise you get a whole bunch of weird pop-ups. I had to end with a little humor. But anyway, if any of you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And I would tell you that anything you want to talk about, I'll guarantee you safe harbor, but I will use whatever we talk about to try and improve GSA. Thank you very much.
That was the end of the annual meeting. Are there any questions from the audience that'd like to ask any one of us? The board members are present, or some of us, Adrian, myself, and Bruce. If none, thank you very much for your participation. Thank you.